I just, I'm still humble. I can't believe I'm here today. I still pinch myself. I can't believe that a nappy-headed, scar-faced, uneducated man from the projects of East Flatbush, Brooklyn, could do something that would warrant the time of such beautiful people, like this room full of people like I see here today, and I'm really humbled by that. I just want to say thank you so much for caring about what I do or being interested in anything that I have to say. I'm really humbled by that. Tonight, it is my guest that we're here to talk about The Wire and the social injustice, and or maybe some people want to talk about what it was like to film the TV show and things of that nature. But what I would like to share with you tonight is my own personal wire. I took a long, hard, and very dangerous road to get where I'm at today, and important because The Wire is not a TV show for me. I was living it. I lived it before, and I lived it while I was filming, and I want to share a little light on that this evening. I grew up in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. I am the last of 10 children, the 6 boys and 4 girls. Papa was a Rolling Stone. There were 4 brothers amongst all of us, and I grew up pretty much a single family home in the projects of Brooklyn. And although you may see the characters I play, they look real, and you think everybody thinks I'm a thug or I'm this hard rock. I was the most softest kid growing up. I got picked on a lot. I got bullied a lot. If I wasn't being called Blackie, I was Bucktooth. They were calling me soft, and I had no game when it came to the ladies. I had a really huge problem growing up. I had 2 huge problems. I had a really, really, really low self-esteem, and I had a really, really, really big need to be accepted. And as a black male growing up in the hood, that's a recipe for disaster. I did anything to fit in. My first addiction was fantasy. Couldn't stand me. Couldn't stand Mike. Which I look at where I'm at today, I'm like, it's kind of ironic, that I get paid to pretend and to play other people, because that was my escape growing up. I remember the first things I had an issue with, my mother's Caribbean, she's from the Bahamas, and my father is American, he's from South Carolina. And in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, there was a heavy Caribbean, West Indian migration, community, and it was, kind of mixed in with the American community. And I was like a biracial kid, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I was Caribbean. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I was American. And my wardrobe reflected that, There were days when I would get the big tans, and I would stuff it with plastic to give the appearance that I had dreads, and I wore, Clarks, and I knew all the Rockers records, and then on other days I would wear my black Kango and my unlaced Adidas and my tight leaves, and it was like it was Run DMC time. I tried to fit in anywhere I can, anything but taking time to find out who Mike was. I couldn't play ball. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't the tough guy. Most of my friends growing up were girls. I did things. I hung out with the girls. I was in the house with the easy bake oven, and I knew how to jump rope, double dutch, and hopscotch. And I got really, really cute for that. And it just added to the pain. I said, Mike, you got to find some way to fit in. And since I wasn't a tough guy, I said, well, I'm going to be the cool kid. I'm going to be the party guy. And I learned how to do drugs very early. By the age of 13, I knew what it was to go and take your money and stick it, you know, you would knock on the door in the projects, and then they would take the lock out, and it would be a hole, and you stick your money through, and they would give you like a miniature vanilla envelope folded over with a piece of tape on it. We called those tray bags back in the day. And then I would take my my allowance money, and I would save up until I could have enough to buy on the weekends. The drink of the day was apple malt duck. So by 13, this was who I was. Just the wrong road all day long. And that escalated to more severe, more harder drugs, and I got to the point where I had to get my life together. I said, you know what, Mike, you know, your mom, you know, she's struggling, she worked hard, you know, no offense to anybody, but, you know, my mom's, you know, she worked hard, she didn't believe in getting on the system, you know, welfare wasn't a thing. My mom's worked hard. I didn't even know we were poor until I became a dancer and started going out and venturing with other kids younger than me, and they would be talking like, what you gonna do for the weekend? Oh, I'm gonna get my father's car, we're gonna drive up to the oh, you got one of those in the house of father? And he let you hold the car? You know, it's like, wait, these kids got a different life from me, you know, and you know, I used to just play it off. I kind of always kept my distance with my work colleagues because I didn't want them to know the poorness that I came from. And but anyway, before that, I decided to get my head together and try to make my mom's proud. And I went and got help. You know, I was like 19, you know, 20, somewhere up in there. And it was like I was completely like strung out. You know, cocaine and you know crack, all of that. You know, we didn't have, you know, crackheads running around looking smoked out back in my day. You know, people, it was glorified. Where I grew up, coming up in the era, you know, you freebase, you know, crack is whack, we freebase. You know, there's people dressed, you know, and it was kind of out in the open. So we as kids aspired to be like that. And that was a instant love affair, and it was an instant disaster. I was completely out of control. And by 19, I was one of those kids that they were talking about on the news with this new epidemic. So I went away, I got my head together, or so I thought. I came home and I got a good job at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. I was really good at getting good jobs. I had a knack for that. I had, you know, even when I went to apply myself to school, like my whole thing was, I can just read the prefix and the last chapter of a book and wing the paper and get an A. You know, my brothers would be jealous of me because he would study so hard. I was like, you know what I mean? So I always had this knack to it, I could do it, but school was never my thing. You know, I dropped out after the 8th grade due to a lot of personal issues, you know, even outside of the addiction. There was a lot of things within things that happened to me that I didn't deal with well. So school was just the last thing on my mind. And so I technically dropped out of school after the 8th grade, and by the time I was 19 years old, I went to George Westinghouse. It was a technical vocational school, and it was like a shop school. So I was at 19 years old, I had a 10th grade shop level, and I was at a 9th grade academic level. Needless to say, I was expelled. It's the only option, GED. So after that, after the programs of getting myself together, I said, I'm gonna get a good job. I got a good job at Pfizer. I went to school at Borough Manhattan Community College, or as we called it in New York, the 13th grade. And things were looking really good. And then I saw this music video, Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation. And boom, the light bulb goes off in my head. Now I know what I want to do in life. I'm going to become a dancer. You know, I'm going to go find Janet Jackson and I'm going to get behind her. Dead serious. You know, and I quit school, I quit my job, I dressed in black all day long in Dr. Martin boots, and I had the big hoop earrings, and I would sit in the house and I would watch all her music videos, and I taught myself how to catch choreography and how to dance and all that stuff. And about a year, you know, I ended up homeless. You know, I couldn't pay my rent when I had my own place. I didn't want to go back home to my mother. And not to say that I didn't have a place to go, because my mother hates when I say I was homeless. I just didn't want to hear her mouth. So I decided to take to the street, and I just would find my way the best way that I can. So I rocked and rolled for about 2 years, and then finally, slowly but surely, the jobs started coming in. I started working, started getting plane tickets, and people asking me to go on tour with them, and that lasted for like 7 years, But although things were going good, there was one thing that I wasn't doing. I wasn't getting to know Mike. I wasn't dealing with those demons that I had from a child, and they snuck up on me, because that's, my job is how I define myself. I'm a dancer, I'm fine, I'm working, I thought I couldn't do it, I'm doing it, you know what I mean? And so that was who I was, and I still wasn't, it was still fantasy. That doesn't define who I am. So, needless to say, the demons came knocking the door and I fell prey. And I started, drinking and smoking weed and alcohol and all sorts of other things. And it caught up to me. It caught up to me real bad, but even within that era, when it started to catch up to me again, another thing started happening. Well, I was off in LA, I'm about to go on stage, and I get a phone call from my so-called manager at the time. She's like, "Where are you?" It's like, "Cali." She goes, "Well, get your butt back to New York on Monday. Martin Scorsese wants to meet you." I'm like, "What?" So I caught the red eye out that Friday, boom, and I go there, and he read me for a film that he was doing with Nicolas Cage called Bringing Out the Dead. So, they were like someone at my level at that time. There were 3 roles that I could have read for, and they were all 3 different personalities, or 3 emotions, excuse me. One was non-caring, the other one was like laughing, being sarcastic, and the other one was crying, crying for his life. So the one the character who was dying was the meatiest one. So everybody wanted that role. I went in the room, I did all 3 parts, and I hit all 3 emotions in the space of 5 minutes. And Marty looks at me and goes, "You're a damn good actor." He looks at the cast and says, "Give it to Marty." Marty wants to give it to him. And I was like, this is the process, this is how it goes. Once this thing tells you you're a damn good actor, I can rock with this. And so, needless to say, I hung my dancing shoes up. Now, I was one of those cocky New Yorkers, I'm not going to LA. What's this policy they might be talking about? I ain't beat for all of that. I'm just gonna chill right here. I'm on some Sinatra stuff. You can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And at the time, there was a lot of work in New York City for up-and-coming actors. You had NYPD Blue, you had Law and Order, you had what's the black cop and the Puerto Rican cop, Undercover and all that stuff. And a lot of movies, and Bringing Out the Dead was filmed, Sopranos was filmed in New York. So I'm like, let me get my feet wet here, I'll build my resume, and when I go to LA, they will send for me, LA will send for me, So, lo and behold, that started to happen. I started getting gigs, things started to pop. I had a role on Sopranos, I got a role on Law and Order. These are all like guest starring roles, prominent roles. And then I had the Scorsese, he told me to call him Marty, I got him under the belt. So I'm like, I packed my bags, I sat by the door, like, LA gonna be calling by any minute now. This was 99. And all of a sudden the phone stopped ringing. There wasn't nothing coming in. And I'm in the projects, at this time my mother, she retired and she opened up a daycare in our building. And as God would have it was doing very well. She's very successful at it. And so going into 2000, that Y2K thing, she said she made enough money where she wanted to fly her family to her hometown, Nassau, to celebrate Christmas and New Year's. We did it. So we know the ball done dropped, everything is over, and me and her, we sitting down, we toasting, chilling, and she's like, "You're right. You might as well come work for me in the daycare in 2000. Anyway, you might as well work for it." I'm like, "Yeah, man, that does wonders for my self-esteem." But I said, "What the heck, I'll do it." And for the better part of 2 years, I left the business. At this point, I was so bitter. I was scared, I was angry, and I was very bitter. And every audition, I would go in with the, "Oh God, if I don't get this crap commercial, the world gonna be over. My life depends on this." And I was like, that ain't the way to go into this. You want to go into this easy, Mike, and you pressing this too hard. You need to step back. As we say in Brooklyn, you need to fall back, right? So I did that. And I said, I got my mom, she got a family business. Things could be a lot worse. And I became her administrative assistant, and I worked for all of 2000 and most of 2001. Now don't get it twisted, I was drinking and smoking like a you know what, you know what I'm saying, and doing all kinds of reckless behavior. And by November, I'm sitting in my apartment, and I'm with a bunch of dudes, and we passing blunts and drinking liquor, and something happened. I had this out-of-body experience. I looked at the TV and I was on it. The repeat from Sopranos comes on. And I'm like, really? There's something wrong with this picture. Does anybody see something wrong with this picture? And I talked to my mom, and I said, you know, Mom, I think I need to give this acting thing one more shot. If it don't work, you got me. I'm gonna rock with you all day for this with the dick. I'm changing habits for life. And you know, now you gotta remember this is November of 2001. Some things had happened by this time. Something particularly that we refer to as 9/11. I don't know about y'all, but I didn't deal with that too well. In fact, that was a very jagged pill for me. I stood on the roof of my project building, and I watched those buildings go down with my naked eye. You know, depending on which way the wind would shift, you could smell burning flesh in the air from Manhattan to Brooklyn. And, you know, I forget how old I was, definitely was in my 30s. I was just lost. I was angry, I was scared, I was depressed. I didn't know what my next move was gonna be, you know, and I was scared of what's happening to the world. I put all that weight on me, and I became clinically depressed, where I would drive around Ground Zero in my Blazer, my Chevy Blazer, and I had the windows wound down, it was freezing, and I would smoke lots of weed, and I was taking packs of like they were Skittles, you know, and all I wanted to do was listen to Tupac, and just play Tupac. And I would just like, you know, I would just drive around the streets smoking weed, popping packs, you know, listening to Pac. And, you know, I said, Mom, I gotta do something. I said, lend me some money. And she lent me $10,000. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go forward with this. And I said, I gotta reintroduce myself to the industry because I've been gone for 2 years. No one knows who I am or where I'm at. So I gotta reinvent my package, you know, the new headshot, the new reel. And I bought a computer and I learned how to do my resume and all this stuff. And, you know, I sent it out for Christmas of 2001. And I was like, you know, it's Christmas, I'm gonna send them out. And I say by January, second week of January, I should get some phone calls and what have you. And nothing happened. February, no phone calls. I spent all this money. My rent was due. I couldn't ask my mother for another dime. I was tired of working at a daycare at this point, although I was proud of myself for what I accomplished in there, but I was tired of it. And I slipped deeper into depression to the point where I wondered if I wanted to be here anymore. And then one afternoon, one evening in March, I got a fax on her machine. She called me downstairs. Biggest fax. We're looking for African American male, drug, gang, gun toting, openly gay. He robs drug dealers, non-feminine. And I was like, I think I can work with this. So I went in all that darkness, and I put myself on tape for one character, one time. They sent it to David Simon. Next thing I know, I was being told when and where to report into Baltimore. So I tell you that because we so often get so caught up in this character of Omar and how gangster he is and how real he is, man with a code and all these things. But I wonder how many people actually really stop to put themselves in my shoes and think about how dark my state of mind must have been to portray a character of that caliber and make him so believable. I was in a very, very dark place. And that's what I took. That's what's in Omar. Omar's my alter ego in a lot of ways. I put a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger, a lot lot of my frustration is in Omar, where it came to the point where he became my second skin, because you know I like fantasy. So, you know, it was like when people go to the street call me, yo, oh, yo, Omar! I was like, but I know. You know, I love that because, you know, Omar was everything I could not be in my real life. Fearless, gangster, you know, thugged out. That's right, you know, and he's soft in another way, but you still ain't gonna tell him he's soft to his face. You know what I'm saying? I was like this dude, you know, so he was my Superman suit. You know? But then, you know, so, you know, I come down to Baltimore, so now the other side happens where, you know, I never, you know, I think when I booked The Wire, they would pay me $5 grand an episode. That is the most money I ever made in my life. And then I came to Baltimore, and I saw this city, I fell all in love. I was like, yo, I love this city. This is crazy out here. No, I really love Baltimore. I'll never forget, because see, your hood look different from my hood. You know, we was all the graffiti, at least so back then, you know. Anyway, I remember driving down Martin Luther King Boulevard, right? And you know where the project used to be, they tore them down and built a little nice house. I was like, man, it's nice over here. I'ma move over here. I'ma move over here. They're like, man, shut up, stupid. Damn projects. The hood. I'm talking about. Eat you over there. No, that's the hood. You know, I mean, that's how much I loved Baltimore. You know, when I came to this city, all I saw was beauty. It was so much beauty in the city. So, you know, the first season we did that, and then, you know, the second season, I said, they made me a series regular, and then they gave me a 5% bump. So I did the math. Now, season 1, I was in 10 out of 12 episodes. So season 2 with the 5% bump, I'm like, that times just my episodes. I'm in money, you know. So I packed up all my stuff, my project apartment. Moved down to Baltimore, and I got my first apartment on, it's called the Bolton Hill area, on Park and North Avenue. On the road home, I had the first floor and the basement. Man, you couldn't tell me nothing. I had exposed brick, 2.5 bathroom. One of them was in my bedroom, in the backyard, pot belly oven downstairs. I was like, man, please, I'm white people for neighbors, can't tell me nothing. So I moved down here, and something happened. See, we got introduced to the mind of David Simon in season 2. Up until season 2, we thought it was a black show. It was about blacks, and it was like, yeah, we got us a hit. It's all about us. He came back season 2 with the Doc story, and he hired all the white actors. Man, I didn't deal with that too well. You know, and I done moved down to Baltimore, you know, and what happened was, you know, I had all this time on my hand because I wasn't working the way I did season 1. So I'm sitting down in Baltimore with idle time and money. What do you think I did? I ran the streets. I ran these streets backwards and forwards, up and down. I ran these streets and I spent all kinds of money, and I was angry at David Simon. I called him a bitch because he took the show from us and gave it to the white people. But I was serious. I was just that ignorant, you know. But now looking back, I realized that, you know, it wasn't a black story. It wasn't a Baltimore story. It was an American story. It's a social issue that goes on in all our cities throughout every state. You know what I'm saying? When Pac said there's a city and then there's a ghetto in every city and a nigga in every ghetto. And nigga don't mean you just gotta be black. I'm talking about poverty, people who hurt. You know what I'm saying? So I couldn't see that season 2 because I was too busy hurting my damn self. You know? So what happened was I had all this idle time and oh boy, I gotta go play with this dude Michael again. Oh, Michael, you again? Damn, man. No, I want Omar back. You know, who likes Mike? Who wants to be Mike? Mike is corny, he's boring, he's soft, he's ugly. Nobody's scared of old Mike. You know, nobody loved Mike. I sure didn't. You know, so into season 2, after I came off of my parade throughout the streets of Baltimore, I was faced with the reality. That Wire money came down to the wire. And I had had to take all my stuff out of my beautiful Baltimore apartment, put it in storage, and thank God I never got rid of my apartment in the projects back in Brooklyn, because at the end of season 2, I tell you, I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor in the projects, broke, lonely, scared. My family comes in, you know, my mom, you know, I'm the baby, so she's like, I'm telling you, you got to go there, you got to do this, and I'm tell you right now what you got to do, and everybody in my ear, and something just said, you know, now backing up, I always had this ticket, I had it from the frequent flyer mileage, right, that I would, you know, I always said, you know, if ever I have to go to Cali, I would use this one-way ticket. I would see what it's up. But every time I'd be like, Mike, maybe you better book this ticket. I would get a job for my second daddy, Dick Wolf, you know, Law and Order. We call him my second daddy in New York, because he paid many rent, many phone bills. You know, when you didn't know where your next job was coming from, you would always get a call from Law and Order. So it was like, he took care of a lot of New York City actors or East Coast actors. So I never used this one ticket until this time. It was in 2004. I had lost everything. I was depleted financially and emotionally, mentally. And I took this one-way ticket and I went to California. I sat in the LAX for 7 hours. I called a friend of mine. I told him I needed help. I'm broke and I'm out here with nowhere to go. 7 hours later, he sends his brother to me. He puts $500 cash in my hand. He gave me the key to a Toyota Corolla, and it was a rental, and he gave me another key to an Econo Lodge on Vermont and 3rd. Everybody knows LA? I was in the hood. But I was so grateful, man. I went and got my little can of my little jar of mayonnaise and on the air conditioner, but they know with no refrigerator in the room, and I was so happy. That was a Tuesday night. He said, Mike, he said, you gotta go anywhere? I said, I got one last thing. Take me to this address. I had 20 minutes to be there, and we zoomed to this address. That was the callback for Lackawanna Blues, right? So by Friday, that was Tuesday, I checked into the Econo Lodge. By Friday, you know, I was at the Palazzo across the street from the Grove. Everybody watch E! Entertainment, the Grove. I was living across the street from the Grove, talking about rags to riches, you know? So, that pretty much was my life, you know. On a good note, from that point on, when I got evicted out of my project apartment, I never stopped working. I was blessed to keep working on the hiatus. The downside was the work I was doing professionally kept me from working on myself. And I was just rocking and rolling, and I was going around this country and around the world, and I was secretly hurting myself, constantly hurting myself. I'll tell you, if you look at season 3, when I come into season 3, I'm buffed. By the time we Omar kills ring the bell, I'm as big as your finger. No, but the grace of God, I don't know how I didn't end up on TMZ or in entertainment news, how I didn't get arrested, or more importantly, how I did not lose my life on these streets. You know, and not just Baltimore, I'm talking about these streets, period. I noticed somebody, I got an angel looking over me, you know? So I was rocking and rolling, living out of my bag, living out of my suitcase. I went to Africa. When I came back, I said, Mike, enough is enough. You gotta grow up. You gotta get your head together. And I went, I got some help. And my stuff that I left in storage after season 2, I just got it out in September of '09. I just got grounded again. I just landed. And I would say these are the best 19 months I've spent in my life clean and sober. The best quality of life I ever had with these last 19 months. You know, I'm jumping over a lot of things. You know, there was like this, there was some DUIs. I had got 2 DUIs. I was in Pennsylvania. I caught 2 DUIs in the state of Pennsylvania in less than like 6 months. Not cool. I was facing jail time. Lord knows I'm not built for jail, right? But I got all this community service. I had like 250 hours of community service. So I said, you know, I ain't really onto the washing toilets things. What I got to do, like I said, I would go and I would speak to kids, young kids, in elementary schools and high schools, and I'm gonna tell on myself. I'm gonna tell them what an idiot I am. and how many times I almost killed myself or got myself killed doing dumbness in the street. I'm gonna tell myself, and hopefully they won't make the same mistakes that I did. And something started to happen. Get good feelings from that. I started enjoying that. It started making me feel good, and then something else started happening. These kids started listening to me. They was interested in what I had to say, not because they saw some entertainer, because they saw something in me that they identified with. Because no bells, no whistles, no sugarcoating. This is who I am. Let's get the celebrity thing out the window. Because I had to come to terms with I'm not Omar. You know, I had to grieve and bury that character and wash it off of my spirit. You know, I got lost. Y'all wonder when Omar got killed? I was really messed up because my Superman suit it was like, you know, oh man, that was one of the hardest things I had to deal with when that character died. And not just because the job was over, because he was my alter ego, that was my brother. Omar was my best friend. When I stepped into Omar, like I would go into character, I'd get out and start walking at that dude, you know what I'm saying? And I had all this, you know, and sometimes I did it subconsciously, especially when I was drinking. Omar came all out of me, you know? And I was gonna miss him, man. I mourned him, and I had to put it away. I still love him, and I can talk about that character. When I tell y'all, when I buried Omar, I buried a lot of darkness with him. And I hope that it stays there, because I don't ever want to feel the way I did when I was filming that show. You know, I suffered through it, but at the hands of myself. You know, because I referenced Janet Jackson's The Rhythm Nation video. I never told you why I love that video so much. You know, aside from the fact she was fine as frog kids. Aside from that, if you remember the video, it depicts a dark-skinned young boy, lost, trapped, running around, trying to find his way out of a damn, abandoned, dark warehouse. That's what my life felt like. And I was like, Mike, you gotta find the light. You gotta get out of this darkness and you gotta find the light. And it started happening when I started doing that service. It's all about service. That's why I'm here today. You know, I tell my story so y'all can know what my why was about. Because that show was more than a show to me. You know, it was a way of life for a long time. And I seen a lot of hurt and pain out there in the streets when I was running around, when I was hidden from y'all, hiding from y'all who I really am. But today, this is Mike. This is not Omar, this ain't Chalky, this is Mike. And you may have came here to see a celebrity, but I ain't really on it like that. You know, because life is too precious and too short, and I've come too close to the fire too many times to sit up here and act like nothing's wrong with me. I'm a work in progress like a mother, you know? So getting back with the kids, the service, right? I said, well, how can I take this a step farther? You know, I'm getting confused about this. And what happened was, during the service, I got to find out the best question that any human being can ask themselves. And that question is, what is my purpose? That is the best question that any human being can ask themselves. And pray God you find the answer. Because I realized for me, I said, Mike, you know, you ain't go to school. You didn't study. Me and my mother be like, Mike, we be sitting down and like, well, okay, Mom, how I get here? Like, what's really good? Like, how did I get here? She's like, child, down and pet, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? We be trying to figure out, because by my hands, I should have been dead. By statistics, what I've overcome, what I've survived, what I've escaped. Man, you know how many people I lost in these streets doing the same dumbness that I was doing? How I get here, how I'm alive, and then much, even more, how I end up talking to Johns Hopkins. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be a number. I'm supposed to be a statistic. You know, so I must have been spared for a reason. And I decided that my reason I was spared for is to tell my story. One, to let the child coming up behind me, the next generation coming behind me, know they're not alone, that I went through it too, that I'm going through it, you're not unique. And two, I could come to a room full of fine, young, brilliant minds like this and tell you all what's really going on out there. You know, now I'm gonna ask you all a question. I want to see a show of hands. How many people in this room watch The Wire? Okay, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Actually, part two of the question. How many of you right now have a young male or female from the inner city that you're mentoring? That's the problem. All right? But see, that's the problem. And I'm not pointing fingers. I don't want you to think I'm pointing fingers, because I went through my own fair share of adding to the problem or turning away when I was in my darkness. You know, I was spending my money in the hood on things that I had no business doing. You know, so I'm no angel. But coming out of my darkness led me to service. And that's what it's about. So if you really, really hear and you say you love The Wire, like I believe you do, the question what we want to ask is, how do you prevent any more wires? Because the dynamic of show it was, as much as we were all entertained, I don't want to see no more wires, because David Simon didn't make it up in the figure of his imagination. That came from cold hard facts that he researched his 10 years as a reporter at the Baltimore Sun. You know, and this is going on across the country. I went around, man, I met some of the most beautiful, scarred people in pain when I was out there doing my nonsense. And I realized there's a wire in every city across the Baltimore is not excluded to that. You ain't caught in the market on the hurt and pain. The wire was based here because that's where David was from, and it was such an amazing city to tell an amazing story in. But we got wires popping up all around this country. So I ask the question again, what is my purpose? Why was I spared all the death that I survived? Why was I given a platform like this? I don't take this lightly, and I'm not here to look fly or none of that. I got 19 months clean, but I just put the drugs and alcohol down. So don't think, you know, I want to look good and everything like that, you know. But real talk, this is who I am, and it took me a long time to be able to stand here and say I'm finally beginning to be comfortable in my own skin. So if I'm going through this, you can imagine how many more kids is going through this? From these inner cities. And I'm saying that we all have our issues, we all have insecurities as human beings. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we, you know, people who you know, that come from my past, we corner the market on that. No, everybody feels their pain. Everybody's going through something. But you guys are in a better situation, because you have the one thing that can't nobody take from you, and that's education and opportunity. I don't even call it education, I call it opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Information, I call it information. I call education information, because when you have information, you broaden your choices, because that's really what life is all about. So that's what I be trying to give to these kids. I try to expose them to whatever I can, and what little I got, all I got is what's the entertainment. That ain't really what the stuff is about. They look at me and see me on TV and want to idolize me, but I tell them quick, your real stars are your teachers, man. The people in your life every day. And you guys, you here with some of the best education in the world. You know what I'm saying? You got some of the best, you're getting some of the best education in the world. You know, if someone was to ask me, what can I do? I would say, man, it starts really simple, concrete baby steps. You know, a good friend of mine told me this. Pick a local inner city school, elementary, high school, whatever. You go to the principal's office and you tell them who you are, what you're doing, where you're at in your life right now, and that you would like to mentor a young child, a young mind. A couple of hours, hour or two a day. Even if it's just something like just to bring them out of their hood, to bring them to the campus and teach them how to do homework, make them better math students, or write better, or get their reading average up. Because, like I told you before, I'm working with 8th grade education. Once they get past the bells and whistles of seeing a TV star, you know, I just shot my load, basically. You know what I'm saying? We need y'all, like, you know, I'll get them in the room, but y'all gonna keep them. Y'all gonna keep them. You know, this is a collective effort to stop what's happening. Their Booker was here a little while ago, you know, and what I decided what I can do to reach a bigger group of kids is I decided to start my organization. Professor Ogletree from Harvard has been on my case for the past 2 years to start an organization. I finally decided to do it, right? And I have two friends that I've met over the years here in Baltimore. One is with me today, Dominic Nell, and his partner, Jarrell Wilson, and their other partner, Keon Carpenter. You may know him from the Falcons. He's a Baltimorean. Those three have started this organization called For My Kids. You know what I'm saying? What's the letters again? FMK, you know. FMK stands for For My Kids. And it was his partner, Jarrell Wilson, that said, yo, Mike, you know, because see, I used to do a lot of research for Omar. You know, I knew I didn't want him to sound like a dude from Brooklyn, you know what I'm saying? You know, I wanted him to, you know, you already know how do tell. You know, I wanted that Baltimore swag. So I had to hang with my peeps, and they would take me around Baltimore, and we would hang in the hood, and I would absorb the swagger and the culture and the vibe, the vibration of what it is to be a black man in the city of Baltimore. And during that process, my man Jarrell, he was like, yo, Mike, he said, you see these kids, man, they ain't got nothing to do. And I was like, damn, there's a lot of kids running around these streets with nothing to do. They don't know nothing to notice. I got to put the blunt down, I got to notice something. And I was like, oh, so what's going on? He said, man, they need you, Mike. And he planted that seed in my head from back then. I wasn't ready for it. But he said, Mike, you should start an organization and call it MKW. I said, yeah, Michael Kenneth Williams Foundation. He was like, nah, dude. MKW stands for Making Kids Win. And I was like, I like that. So that's what my organization's name is today, MKW, MakingKidsWin.org. I went forward with it. It took a few years before I was ready to do it, but better late than never, as my mom always said, you know? And my goal is to build community centers. You know, that's what I can do. And it's gonna be the basic core is gonna be surrounded by what I know, sports and entertainment. You know, but there will be a lot of other facets, you know, like what the professor who drove me today, I forget the teacher, the professor's name, that drove me today. Dr. Beyonce? Y'all know what I'm talking, I know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? He spoke to me today about something called grassroots that he will be speaking about further to you guys, man. But it's a beautiful program that empowers you at the level where you're at, where you don't have to go to the schools and you don't need millions of dollars, you don't gotta go to Johns Hopkins, I need $1 million, you don't gotta go get and start all this stuff. It's grassroots. It's the name of it because that name is for a reason. Concrete baby steps, and it's empowering you to help your community. Because we gotta do it. There's too much going on in the world. So we start small, just little areas, one person at a time. It takes a village to raise a child. These are things that I was raised on, these philosophies that I was raised on, but it didn't, you know, it sounded like slogans back then, but now they sound more like ways of life to me. You know, they make sense today. So, you know, MKW, Making Kids Win. We're gonna build community centers. The first one is gonna be in Newark, New Jersey, because I've spent some time as one of the hoods. That was one of the last hoods I stayed in before I got clean. And, you know, same thing as Baltimore, but right now I think Newark they're a little bit more out of control. It's really, really bad. I don't know, man, Booker told you, but they on fire right now in Newark. Concrete baby steps, and it's empowering you to help your community. Because we gotta do it. There's too much going on in the world. So we start small, just little areas, one person at a time. It takes a village to raise a child. These are things that I was raised on, these philosophies that I was raised on, but it didn't, you know, it sounded like slogans back then, but now they sound more like ways of life to me. You know, they make sense today. So, you know, MKW, Making Kids Win. We're gonna build community centers. The first one is gonna be in Newark, New Jersey, because I've spent some time as one of the hoods. That was one of the last hoods I stayed in before I got clean. And, you know, same thing as Baltimore, but right now I think Newark they're a little bit more out of control. It's really, really bad. I don't know, man, Booker told you, but they on fire right now in Newark. In the city of Irvington, in the county of Essex, my one church buried 186 people, all under the age of 30, all murdered. Now, These are the numbers that I see. This is what I see, because I'm in the hood. I don't let my job detach me from the hood, because if I do that, I lose. That's where I get my vibration from. That's where my characters come from. My characters come from people I know in the hood, you know. So I, they had a saying, it's not about being able to leave the hood. It's about being welcomed back. And I pride myself in being welcomed back. And when I come back, what am I going to do? Service. And I don't want to come in like, the great hope, like I'm going to come and save the day. It's not about that. It's about us doing it together. It's about empowering each other, So what I see in the community, whether it's Newark, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Chicago, because I'm out there too, with Fred Hampton Jr., I'm all over the place, and this is what I want to do. I want to build community centers. So I ask you tonight, what do you want to do? What is your purpose? No matter how big or small, what can you do with your assets? Because y'all are in position. You are the future. You're the ones that are going to change the world. Might be the future president of the United States in this room. I don't mean that as no joke. I'm dead serious. I don't know. We don't know that. I know it can't be me. That ship has sailed for me. No, I'm okay. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to have my health. I'm grateful to be free. So what I have to do is tell you all my shortcomings and anything I can do to help, to give, to get y'all to the next level. Because y'all to get the next generation too. I'm much older than y'all. I know I look good, but I'm much older than y'all. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't value my education the way you guys are doing. I threw it away because I had too many demons beating me down that I fell prey to. And I know a lot of other kids that I know you guys care about are going through the same thing right now. So lastly, I ask you one more time, what is your purpose? Thank you. Do you have any questions? Yes? You want to ask a question?
Of all the episodes that you filmed when you were here, which one's your favorite, and did any of it really hit you hard at home, remind you of a personal experience in your life?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. When you were filming, was there anything that particularly hit you hard or reminded you of anything from your childhood or former experiences?
Wow, yeah, there were a lot of things, that kicked up a lot of things in my childhood. Most of them I'm not really comfortable talking about in public, but yeah, there were a lot of things. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Sorry. Yes.
Yes, I heard, of course, how you informed yourself about Omar living. But how are you informing yourself about Chalky White? What I mean is there's a lot of history in terms of the white Christian American, let's say, violence against African Americans right after World War I, race riots and the like. How have you informed yourself to be able to play Chalky White?
What I'm doing with Chalky White is I'm channeling a huge amount of ancestral energy. My uncles and my father, they're a lot older. A lot of the men that I grew up looking up to, they're all gone, and they're all in their 80s. They would have been in their 80s now. mid to late 80s, and I take remnants from different family members that I remember, that I know lived in that era. You know, my father coming from the South, I know that I've had family who have died by the hands of the Klan, and I channel that, you know, through the craft. You know, so we call the process of acting, but it's called the craft for a reason. You know, so yeah, I'm channeling right now with Chalky. Thank you.
I work at the Baltimore Needle Exchange. People that in real life that were portrayed in The Wire, and there are a lot of Omars around. Do you think that a black male who had not actually lived it, say like a Hopkins kid was like, I'm not into this academic thing anymore, and I'm gonna be an actor, and I'm gonna try out for a similar character to Omar, would a man who had not lived that actual life in the hood and around the drugs and around the whole corner aspect of urban life and the whole family dynamic, everything that's at play there, that's very intimate and very personal, would someone who had not actually lived it been able to channel Omar in the incredibly powerful way in which you did throughout the series?
Absolutely. When my friends who know me growing up, and they look at me and they laugh because they know who I was growing up. They know that I'm so opposite. I'm everything opposite of Omar. You know, outside of maybe having the experience of growing up very closely around that mentality.
Yeah.
Trust
Like
me when I tell you, my mom's
watching
into
Omars, so you grew up watching Omars, so you may have not been in Omar, but you grew up watching Omars, and
Yes.
that, you know.
I still think, you know, with the craft of acting, if you research a character, you research a story, if you research a time, I believe that I believe that anything is possible. I would never say, oh, because this person never experienced that lifestyle, they could not portray Omar as honestly and as convincingly as maybe I did. I would never say that, because you really just never know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. On a sort of different note, you're working on Community right now, right? So, you know, it's a very, like, different sitcom. Like, it's nothing like almost anything else on the air right now. I'm just sort of, like, curious, what's it like working on the set out there?
Working in Community is a whole lot of fun. You know, I sit back, I be like, I say, damn, yeah, Mike, hey, for real, you gonna pay me for this? I can't believe we're getting paid for that. You know, we sit there, you know, with Joe McHale and Chevy Chase, Kenneth Wu, you know, Danny Glover, and Yvette, the whole cast, man. We crack jokes, and like Joel and Chevy, they constantly go at it. So I sit there, we laugh like kids, and then they call us to set, and you know, these guys are like such a well-oiled machine. You know, for me to be invited to that cast, after, you know, they got their rhythm already. They could have easily have like shunned me or been like, oh, okay, you know, you get in where you fit in, but they cleared this at the table for me, and they made the transition very easy to come in and just do what I do and give the appearance of looking funny, because it's really them just reacting to me doing something very similar. You know, Professor Kane is, you know, ex-con, got his degree in prison. You know, not brain surgery for me. You know what I'm saying? But they react off of me and make me look funny. And they work with me. It's a very nurturing environment. I'm having a ball over there.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, you know, it sounds like a blast. I wish I could do something like that, but yeah, cool.
Whatever happened to Legos?
Hi, thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm someone that does not watch TV, but I received Netflix and put in the first episode of The Wire and was just hooked. I've watched the whole season at least 4 times, and I have to agree with Obama that Omar is definitely my favorite character, and The Wire is just one of the top shows out there. So it's just a fantastic performance. I want to congratulate you on that. If you had 2 minutes with Obama, what would you say to him based on your experiences?
I had 2 minutes with Obama already. And I blew it. At the time, I met the senator during his primary election in Harrisburg. So I was in Rhode Island shooting a movie, and I caught the Amtrak over there. So I get to the door, walking in, and the lady who was head of his campaign committee, she greeted me at the door and says, "Michael, listen, I have a favor to ask you." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Our volunteers in Harrisburg have been working really hard, and we would love it if the one who made the most phone calls, we would like to reward them with a phone call from you, would you do that?" And I'm like, "Sure, no problem." She goes in a room of like 3,000 people at this forum and announces that I have joined the campaign. So next thing you know, I got men on me, the Secret Service dudes, and the photographers. I'm like, whoa. So after he spoke, they asked me would I want to go meet him. So I said, yeah, I got my family with me, and because my family relocated, like one of my brothers, and I got some family members that relocated to Harrisburg. So I had about 6 of us, and we walked down in the room, and they had us in this room, and I got nervous because I never doubted that he was going to be the next president of the United States. I was like, I'm about to meet the future president of the United States, and I got shell-shocked, I got nervous, and like my brother that was with me, he's like 6 and change, so I was like cowering behind him. He's coming to the door, I was like trying to dip, not to mention, days, I was doing my rocking and rolling days, and I just expected to go there and sit in the crowd because I wanted to hear him speak with in person. I didn't think I would be thrusted into anything, so I wasn't feeling my best self. And he walked in the room, I was feeling inadequate, I got nervous, and clumped behind my brother trying to duck, and he walks in the room, so my cousin's wife greets him. She goes, "Hello, Senator." He goes, "Hello, how are you?" She goes, I understand that you said that The Wire is your favorite show." He goes, "Yes, that's correct." And she goes, "And you said that Omar is your favorite character?" He goes, "Yes, that's correct." She goes, "Michael Williams." He said, "Where Omar at?" My man was cold. Pushed my family aside, grabbed me, and he gave me, as my mother calls it, the homeboy handshake. And all I could say was, "God bless you. God bless you. God bless you." Stumbling like a damn fool. And I always say if I meet him again, I'll be clear and focused, and have a conversation this time. Next question.
Alright, I had on a more serious note, I had the opportunity to work in East Baltimore all summer long, and knowing Baltimore and having seen it, it's a city that really there's so many churches, and the churches seem to play such an important role. I wonder if you can clarify that, or do you agree with that? I think the churches play a really big role in inner city communities?
I think the churches have the platform to play a really big role in the community. If they all do it, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I got an issue with that. I'm no religious fanatic, but I have found a spiritual base that keeps me grounded. My church, I go to church in Jersey, in Irvington, and I see how my Rev gets down. He's not a Sunday preacher. He's not, "Hey, God bless you, hallelujah, the basket's over there, singing it Sunday." He's not one of them dudes. He's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week pastor. This man, like those 186 funerals, those burials that he did, he don't get paid for that because the other churches are too scared because they're scared of gang retaliation in their church. They don't want to touch it, either that or they pay for it. "Listen, you ain't got the money, we can't do so, sorry." He in the community, the minute it goes out that there's been a shooting or a murder, my pastor drops everything. He goes there. He's in the hospital, like he's in the community. And I've never ever seen that before. So I'm not trying to brag, or I'm not, you know, everybody love their church or their place of worship, but I know for a fact, to me, I remember there was a time when pastors didn't get paid for what they did. Like the reverends, the pastors, they worked the job during the week and did from the soul. You know, I don't know when church became big business. You know, and I missed that trend. That must be hot, so I don't know what was going on. But, you know, so I look at my pastor, and he is an example to me of what it means to service the community. And I think, if I dare to say that a lot of black churches can take notes from how we do at Christian Love Baptist Church over in Irvington. You know, I cannot tell you how involved he is in the community. There's nothing this man will not do if you ask him. If he hears something, he's there, effortlessly, tirelessly, constantly going. And I don't know many pastors that really rock like that. They're scared of our young people. I mean, I can't blame them much, but you know, if you know what I'm saying, there's no reason to be scared, but if you are servicing the community, then service the community. You know, you gotta get outside the church. It just can't be in the church. You gotta go in the streets and reach the people that need it. There's a sign on that church, a big sign on top of my church. You wanna know what it say? Sinners are welcome. I'm like, oh, of course it's my church. I know I'm in the right place. You know, sinners are welcome because that's what it should be. These kids need help. They don't need to be, and young people, you need to find Jesus and all. I mean, it's got to be a different approach because we're lacking a spiritual foundation in our community, and that's needed no matter what it is. So, thank you. Next question.
Great talk. So, I saw you trapped in the closet, and I just was wondering how it was working with R. Kelly.
Man, I'll tell you. Man, listen, that dude is incredible. He is truly a gracious host, and he is an ambassador of Chicago. I give you two quick stories about him, right? You know, when I first started got that I was working with, I was like, you know, that's R. Kelly, you know. I gotta be on this behavior right here, you know, do the job, and then, you know, I'm gonna slip off and we're gonna get drunk in Chicago, run the streets. So it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they got this real big, this rock and roll McDonald's, right? So I'm in the car now, drunk. I told the driver, they take it through the drive-through, because I'm gonna be bothered, you know, I'm cooking right now. Just go to the drive-through and get me a number 1. So we got to the window where it came. You make your order, you pay. And when I looked through the window, you could see the beeline to the floor where everybody was standing. There was a crowd of people, and it was like, what's going on in here? And when I looked, who you think in the middle of all the people drunk his damn self singing? So I said, wait a minute, hold on. Pull this car over. And I go into McDonald's. Man, it was so, we turned McDonald's. I know now what they call it, the rock and roll McDonald's. We was in there singing like R. Kelly songs and dancing, everybody just eating burgers. Yeah, happy people. Just buzzing. And another time, he, after work one day, he's one of those like crazy geniuses. Like he doesn't sleep. He would stay up all night playing basketball and writing the next day's scenes, right? He would go right before, he would take a couple of hours. He drives around Chicago with his tour bus and his crew. They don't use cars, there's one tour bus they like, it's the tour bus. He would take the tour bus to the set and sleep for a few hours, get up and come and shoot the next day's stuff. And that's what he did, that was his regimen. And one day he took off from that and invited us all to Chocolate Factory, his mansion, and he catered this beautiful southern dinner, soul food dinner, and man, next thing I know, I was passed out in a canoe in his indoor beach. This man has an indoor beach. All I remember, I was passed out and the girl that played my wife, Rebecca, I forget her name was Rebecca, I forget her stage name, but she came to get me out the canoe, and she made a mistake and tipped the canoe over. So I'm like waking up to drowning, you know, and next thing I know, They had to pull me out the pool. I'm sitting it's a pool, but it's set up like a beach with sand and beach chairs. It's phenomenal. And the sky is painted on the wall, and there are waterfalls. So I'm sitting there on the side of the beach. My trunks is down to my ankles. And I'm like trying to just get it together. And I look to the right. And I'm like, I know that ain't Big Man, Big Man.
Yeah.
I know that ain't Mr. Big on the coffee table dancing around the cake. His little big head was dancing at the table. I think he was rooting him on. He was at the table dancing. And this nigga, that head started doing this. And he went face first to the cake. I said, take me home, man. I've seen enough. I'm at the hotel. Oh, man. I had to pull up Kelly, man. That dude was a good dude.
Well, you know how you had your Barack Obama moment where all you could say was God bless, God bless. That's what I feel really right now, is I'm having an overwhelming feeling of just saying God bless. I think your personal story was incredibly moving, and actually, as a fan of The Wire, it did inspire me to volunteer for about a year in a Baltimore City school. And one of the things I noticed, and you brought it up in your own, the children that I was with had experienced such terrible things in their young lives. And actually, I found for some kids, especially if they're not academically inclined, it would prevent them from focusing and learning. These were kindergartners. And I thought, boy, everyone's all about test scores and, we got to make our schools better, teach them to read, write, tell them there's a life out there, a life they really don't get to see at all. And, there was one 4-year-old whose house had burned down next to his. He had seen someone shot, and his dog had been run over, I think, in the summer before starting school. So my question is to you, do you think, or how do you think our schools need to change to address those kinds of needs for kids that are there every day? I think community centers are great, getting kids into sports and their hobbies and entertainment, but to me it's not dealing with what's there. And as you said, even when you were so successful, stuff kept coming back. And so I think that, what do you do about that? What do you think someone could have done about that? Or what do you think the school has to have in place to help kids get beyond the 8th grade because their demons are not allowing them to focus on what's going on in the classroom?
That was powerful, very powerful question. What can we do to make our schools better, man? That's where politics start to take a play. I think it's really unfair how they do our teachers. I think teachers should be revered with the highest respect. And that they're cutting the pay, so as a cause as an effect of the money being low, the quality of teacher is dropping. You see it now with just constantly. Now the new thing is female teachers molesting the little boys now. It used to be, once upon it was the other way around, but now it's the quality is being lowered because there's no financial stability for people who have trained to do this, and it's a travesty. As far as the trauma that young people experience in certain communities like mine, I don't even know where to begin. It's why, when I say mentorship, it's about that. It's more big brother, big sister, because over time, those kids will start to open up and talk. There's no communication. These kids are bottled up inside. I didn't talk about what happened to me for a long time. It's counseling. But it's like, what are you going to do? They'll get cut. I don't even know how to begin to attack that, which is why I said, well, let's just, at least when they get out of school, I can have some beautiful people like some of the Johns Hopkins students, you know, tutor them after school. They come in, you know, do their little homework, or maybe, you know, I'll have you there for a couple of hours. You know, you counsel a few kids, but you engage with. You can pick out the ones who are going through certain things, and kind of like, you know, big sister. It's like, although my thing is geared around sports entertainment, because that's really all I know, I'm gonna have people there in gear who can speak to those issues, counseling, kids who have sexual abuse, drug abuse, physical abuse on different levels. I don't know how, if you can get all the help with us, but I know that communication is the beginning, getting those kids to talk about what happened to them, getting them to go through the pain, feel it, get over it, get through it. You know, I don't have all the answers to how that's being done, but I know as far as the school systems, man, our school systems are in trouble. Who saw Waiting for Superman? Wow, that broke my heart. That documentary broke my heart because it speaks to what you're talking about. What do we do? I wish I had the answer. You know, it's over my pay grade. Thank you.
Hi. I know you don't have all the answers, but in your Obama moment when he was senator, I know you didn't know what to say then. But now that he's president, and you are his favorite character, not just of The Wire, but anything he said. And secondly, The Wire was his favorite show next to you. So if you had his ear for a moment, which it sounds like is remotely possible, what would you ask him to do to fix some of the social problems that you're talking about, and also some of the things that you've experienced?
Well, you know, I kind of sort of have his ear through my Harvard connections, and what I'm working on now is to get him to shed light on my foundation. Doesn't have to be monetary. Just support. If I need to code, if I need this or if I need that, he can point me to the people that, you know, Michael's, you know, brother MKW, make sure he gets what he needs. You know, when I meet him again and we talk, he will get an earful about MKW because that's my purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, indeed. I love it. Next.
Hi. In season 3 of The Wire, one police officer undertook what was essentially a controlled legalization of drugs in a small part of the city.
Amsterdam.
Based on your personal experience with inner cities, do you think that city governments or state governments or the United States as a whole should go through a program like this or not?
Well, like weed, marijuana, I think that, you know, the jig is up, man. You know, I think we should, you know, because you got these medical marijuana drugstores popping up like roaches. You know, you might just go ahead and take the veil off and let it be. You know, I don't smoke anymore, but with the state of the economy and the amount of money that's spent on weed, you know, I think that's just my opinion. I think, you know, what the heck, just legalize it, tax it and legalize it. Now, we're talking about hard drugs, you know, that strikes a personal chord with me, where I would hope to not see hard drugs legalized. I don't think that it should be looked at as a criminal issue. It's a social health issue. I think but to legalize hard drugs like cocaine and heroin, and to just let people legally kill themselves on drugs, because drug addiction is a disease. You know, when you get to that point, people, you know, if people do it because they need it, not because it's they're having the time of their lives. At least that's what it was for me, and I don't condone that. But at the same time, you know, like what David Simon wrote in The Wire, he spoke about the war on drugs. You know, so how could it be? You know, war's in, war on drugs. You know, so that poses the question, like, if you're not gonna stop the facade that you have a war on drugs, because to me that's a smoke and mirror, because we don't grow poppy seeds in the hood. You know, they don't make cocaine and heroin in East Baltimore. That is shipped over here. Where's it coming from? How does it get in our country? You know, so those, like if you're gonna just keep calling it the war on drugs and, you know, it's the revolving door, man, just call it what it is. Take the bed off, man. Come out the closet. You pushing drugs. You know, just be honest about it. You know, 'cause I just don't understand that. So, you know, but for me personally, you know, I would really wish that the day could come when we as a country was serious about stopping the flow of drugs coming into this country.
Thank you.